The following story is entirely fictional, a hypothetical scenario crafted to help us better understand some of the most complex legal and political concepts facing our nation today. By imagining a world just slightly different from our own, we can shine a light on the real challenges and questions that shape American democracy. The date is January 13, 2026. In this imagined reality, the United States is gripped by a constitutional crisis that has captured the attention of the entire nation. At the heart of this crisis stands the Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority in the land, tasked with resolving a conflict that could redefine the boundaries of executive power. In the coming moments, we'll break down a fictional Supreme Court decision that directly challenges the executive authority of former President Donald Trump. The case has sparked heated debate, drawing crowds of reporters, legal experts, and concerned citizens to the steps of the court. This scenario is more than just a legal drama. It's an exploration of the delicate balance of power that defines American government. Our case study, Trump versus Illinois, serves as a dramatic lens through which we can examine how the Constitution is tested in times of uncertainty. We'll take a closer look at why Trump attempted to assert control over Illinois' National Guard, the legal arguments presented by both sides, and the Supreme Court's decisive ruling that would set a precedent for years to come. The stakes are high, and the outcome could alter the relationship between state and federal power. Our story unpacks the legal reasoning behind the decision, introduces the key players involved, and reveals the vote that made this ruling so impactful. We'll see how the justices weighed the arguments and what factors influenced their final judgment. Through this lens, we'll witness how the system of checks and balances is designed to function, even when the nation faces moments of deep crisis and division. The case reminds us that no branch of government stands above the law. While the events you're about to see are imagined, the underlying themes, rule of law, separation of powers, and accountability, are not only real, but absolutely fundamental to the survival of American democracy. These principles guide our institutions and protect our freedoms. So, let's step into this fictional constitutional showdown together and discover the far-reaching consequences that such a case could have for the future of our nation. The crisis erupted when former President Trump, responding to escalating reports of violence and unrest in Chicago, issued a sweeping executive order to federalize the Illinois National Guard. He cited what he called a dire public safety emergency, insisting that the situation had spiraled beyond the control of local and state authorities. Trump argued that only direct federal military intervention could restore order to the city, effectively bypassing the authority of Illinois' governor and local officials. The move was both dramatic and controversial, raising immediate questions about the limits of presidential power. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responded swiftly and forcefully, denouncing the order as an unconstitutional overreach by the federal government. He appeared before the press, vowing to defend the state's rights and the rule of law. Pritzker argued that, under the Constitution, the National Guard remains under state control unless truly extreme conditions are met, conditions he insisted were not present in Illinois. He emphasized that the state had not requested federal intervention, and that the president's action threatened the balance of power. Determined to resist, Pritzker filed a lawsuit in federal court, setting the stage for a historic legal showdown. Trump vs. Illinois. The legal battle quickly centered on the Insurrection Act, a centuries-old law that allows the president to deploy troops domestically, but only under strict and specific circumstances. Both sides prepared for a fierce fight over its interpretation. Trump's legal team argued that Chicago was in a state of chaos, and that federal intervention was not only justified, but necessary to protect lives and property. Pritzker's attorneys countered that there was no credible evidence to support such a claim, and that the city's situation, while serious, did not meet the legal threshold for military deployment. The governor's lawsuit quickly became a broader defense of state sovereignty and the constitutional line between state and federal power, drawing national attention and sparking heated debate across the country. As the case raced to the Supreme Court, the entire nation watched, aware that the outcome could redefine the balance of power in America for years to come. On December 27, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered its ruling in Trump versus Illinois. In a 6-3 decision, the court blocked Trump's attempt to federalize the Illinois National Guard. The majority, led by Chief Justice Roberts, set a strict standard: the president must provide compelling evidence that federal law enforcement is inadequate before deploying state troops. The court found Trump's order lacked factual support and failed to show that existing agencies couldn't handle the situation. This ruling raised the bar for future presidents seeking to use emergency powers. The decision was a direct rebuke of Trump's governing style and reaffirmed that presidential authority is not absolute. The separation between military and civilian law enforcement and state and federal power was powerfully reinforced. Chief Justice Roberts' majority opinion dismantled the administration's arguments, emphasizing that emergency powers under the Insurrection Act are not a blank check. The law requires proof that an insurrection or violence obstructs federal law, and that normal means are insufficient. The court noted the administration hadn't even tried using existing federal resources before attempting to federalize the Guard. Roberts wrote that calling forth the militia is a last resort, not a first choice. Allowing otherwise would let presidents deploy troops domestically on a whim, contrary to a free society. The opinion stressed federalism. The National Guard is a state entity unless lawfully federalized with clear justification. Executive orders, the court clarified, must be grounded in law, not just presidential will. Trump's order, lacking evidence and legal grounding, was declared unlawful. The 6-3 vote revealed a striking coalition. Chief Justice Roberts and the three liberal justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, were joined by Trump appointees Kavanaugh and Barrett. Their votes signaled allegiance to the Constitution over political loyalty, affirming judicial independence. The dissent, led by Justice Alito and joined by Thomas and Gorsuch, argued for greater deference to presidential judgment in emergencies. However, even the dissent didn't defend Trump's lack of evidence. The majority's stance isolated Trump, showing no justice supported his factual claims. The ruling was a critical test of the court's independence and a blow to Trump's narrative of a loyal judiciary. The decision sent shockwaves through the legal and political world. It underscored the weakness of Trump's legal position and the strength of constitutional checks. The Supreme Court's decision had immediate implications for Trump's aggressive use of tariffs. His tariffs, imposed via a national economic emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, now faced legal jeopardy. The court's new standard: a president can't declare an emergency and bypass Congress without solid, evidence-based justification. Critics argued Trump's tariffs lacked a genuine emergency and sidestepped Congress's authority over commerce. A fictional analysis by the Peterson Institute predicted courts would likely strike down the tariffs, applying the new precedent. The prospect of invalidating the tariffs threatened economic chaos. Businesses could sue for refunds, and markets would be thrown into turmoil. The collapse of the tariff regime would devastate Trump's economic agenda. The uncertainty alone would damage the economy, with ripple effects across industries. The Supreme Court's ruling put the entire policy on shaky ground. The Supreme Court's rebuke ignited a political firestorm. Moderate Republicans, now with judicial cover, began to break ranks. The House scheduled a vote to impeach Trump for abuse of power, citing his attempt to federalize the Illinois National Guard. Analysts predicted a bipartisan vote, sending the case to the Senate. Meanwhile, Trump faced a 5 p.m. deadline to surrender on unrelated fraud charges. The convergence of impeachment and possible arrest created unprecedented tension in Washington. If Trump refused to surrender, a constitutional crisis would erupt, with U.S. Marshals tasked to enforce the law. The image of federal officers arresting a former president would be a shocking, polarizing moment. The nation braced for a dramatic and uncertain outcome. These fictional events highlight the very core of American democracy, the enduring principle of the rule of law, which serves as the foundation for our society and government. The Supreme Court's decision in this scenario reaffirmed that even the highest office in the land is not above the law. Presidential power, while significant, has clear limits, and the judiciary stands ready to check any executive overreach, preserving the balance envisioned by the Constitution. The crisis rippled outward, touching the lives of ordinary citizens in Chicago. National Guard members called to duty, and millions of Americans across the country who suddenly faced economic instability and uncertainty about their futures. The collapse of tariffs threatened jobs, sent prices soaring, and left store shelves empty. Meanwhile, the political divide in communities deepened as neighbors and families found themselves on opposite sides of a growing national rift. The Supreme Court's split decision, along with the looming bipartisan impeachment vote, exposed just how fractured both the government and the public had become, with passionate debates erupting in Congress and on the streets. This deep polarization, visible in protests, rallies, and even family gatherings, remains one of America's greatest and most persistent challenges, threatening the unity that democracy requires. the narrative serves as a powerful reminder of how quickly a constitutional crisis can unfold, and how much the nation's stability depends on the integrity, courage, and wisdom of its leaders and institutions. The stakes in such moments are immense: the balance of power between branches of government, the military's proper role in civil society, and the enduring promise of a government ruled by law, not by individuals. Ultimately, every American, regardless of background or belief, has a stake in the outcome. The way such a crisis is resolved will shape the nation's future, its values, and its democracy for generations to come.